Hi, good morning. Welcome, everyone. My name is Joanne Lee, and I am the policy manager here at Midwest BDC. Thank you so much for joining us for this podcast series exploring some of our Midwest BDC working groups. The Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition is working to decarbonize the Midwestern building sector by 2050, and our focus states are Indiana, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and Ohio. Much of our work takes place in our working groups, which are organized by topic area, and they meet either bi-weekly or monthly on Zoom. And joining me today is Tanya Paslawaski. Tanya is the founder and principal of Elevated Engagement, whose mission is to create an energy future that is more democratic, community-centric, informed, affordable, and reliable. Tanya has been super involved in our regulatory working group since it started earlier this year. And this working group's goal is to empower coalition members to participate in and influence public utility commission dockets that impact their community's ability to decarbonize. And working group members hear and share updates from across the region and learn from each other's experiences engaging in these types of spaces. So welcome, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Joanne. I'm really excited to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Do you want to start off with maybe like a quick introduction? I know I gave one, but just so you have.
Sure. Yeah. So my background is in the energy regulatory world. That the last almost 25 years now, I have been working in various roles, working either with regulators or on behalf of organizations or companies that are interested in work in the regulatory space. So either working on the behalf of regulators or working with them on behalf of others. And so this working group is such a great fit, and it's something I'm really passionate about, to make sure that people understand the opportunities to participate in decision-making at public utility commissions.
Yeah, wonderful. I feel like we should start at the beginning, maybe, of how you got involved in energy justice issues. You just spoke about how you've spent so much time in your career in the regulatory space. And so kind of how did that transition happen from regulatory work and then viewing it through more of an energy justice lens?
So social justice issues have always been something I have been interested in and have been learning more about and working on. And in the last couple of years, I have worked directly with a group of regulators on energy equity issues. Mm-hmm. And what emerged in that work is the number of regulators who were really interested in doing things differently and pursuing more equitable approaches to energy policy decisions, as well as recognizing that there's a transition taking place in the energy industry that's bringing resources closer to people's homes, and so that there is more opportunity for communities to be empowered in energy decisions. And so what I noticed also in working with regulators was that folks didn't have a lot of time or capacity to devote to figuring out how to do this well. And so there were a lot of good intentions that weren't necessarily translating into results. Mm-hmm. And the recognition that many community organizations that did show up to participate often weren't aware of the process or ways to most effectively advocate in those spaces. So I saw there a gap in between those two places and thought, this is work that needs to be done, and feeling like, based on my background and my passions, that it was the perfect place for me to dive in and try to make a difference.
Yeah, wonderful. That's so great to hear. Can you talk a little bit about your inspiration behind Elevated Engagement?
Yeah, it really was driven by the information that I just shared about that background. But for elevated engagement specifically, the processes in public utility commissions are often really technical. They're procedure heavy. So there are a lot of deadlines to keep track of, and a lot of, if you don't file something by this date, then you might miss out on an opportunity for things to happen. And so just the process within commissions really emerged to me as a key priority in helping bring more equity to the energy space. And so that is our focus area at Elevated Engagement, is how can we make the processes more inviting, more accessible, and that they offer an opportunity for true ability to have impact on decisions that are being made at commissions.
Yeah. And I think that kind of tension and those barriers are things that we're kind of parsing through in our working group as well, and kind of how to eliminate those. I also feel like maybe folks that are listening in don't really know what a public commission does and how it relates to our larger mission of building decarbonization. So do you think you could speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, that is a huge piece. As many people,
Yeah.
all states have public utility commissions, and they're responsible at a very high level for regulating utilities. But many people don't even know that they exist. So public utility commissions, or public service commissions, they can also be called, different states use different terms, are created in legislation, again, at the state level. And so there's always a legislation that lays out what the commission structure will be, like how many commissioners will they have. It lays out what their responsibilities are. And across states, there are different types of utilities that commission may regulate. So some regulate taxis, for instance, or tugboat licenses, where others focus on what we traditionally think of as utilities, which is electricity and natural gas, or fossil gas and water, maybe. So it varies a lot, but really those are the agencies that are responsible for the rates and the terms of service for utilities that are monopolies. So those who have don't have competition in the service of those utilities, and typically are investor-owned utilities that are under the purview of utility commissions. To the question about how it relates to the Midwest Building Decarbonization's Coalition's mission, a lot of what we need to accomplish decarbonization at the levels that is the goal for the MWBDC is going to depend on decisions that are made at public utility commissions. So an example is if we are working on deployment of electrification and deploying more appliances and resources that are electrified instead of using fossil resources, whether or not there are incentives available in a state, how much those incentives are, how they're structured, and how accessible they are to renters, for instance, or for people who have low income that might not otherwise be able to afford it. All of that structure is going to come through a public utility commission. So being active there is going to be really important as these rules are being developed at the state level for things like decarbonization and other aspects of the energy transition.
Definitely, yeah. The public utility commissions dictate so much. And when we talk about holding our utilities accountable, making things more affordable for people, that is the space that these decisions are being made in. And I feel like there's not a lot of, like you said, not a lot of understanding and engagement around this space. What are some things that you think can be done to like engage more diverse people, more grassroots people in this space that is historically maybe a little bit behind closed doors?
Yeah,
Big
I
question,
think,
I know.
it's having podcasts like this where we're sharing, like raising awareness of the existence of public utility commissions, of what they do and of why they're important, is critical. And again, a network, a regional network like the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition is such a great space for people to learn about these things. It's why the regulatory working group, I think, is so important in the work that MWBDC does, because having a forum for people to ask questions, to share the challenges of trying to engage in that space, to understand how other organizations and states are approaching some of those issues, can have a ton of value to give people ideas of, if we can identify what priorities community organizations have as it relates to energy, or even sometimes as it relates to household needs that may not directly seem related to energy. Sometimes they still can be. So having the opportunity to learn what priorities people and organizations have, and then how those can be translated into what happens at PSCs, so that we can create stronger advocacy and create tools and support resources that can help people understand how to have a voice there and how to have an impact on decision making. So I think a lot of it is around awareness and education about exactly what it looks like, where within commissions is the best point to engage based on the issue that is important to you, things like that. So I think just offering those resources is incredibly important to helping people engage in those spaces.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned a little bit about the role of the working group. So I think maybe we can talk a little bit about the regulatory working group, why you think it's important, kind of what your hopes and your dreams are. You were there from the very beginning when we kicked it off earlier this year. And so I'd love to hear kind of about your vision for it.
Yeah, I'll say in my work, when there have been opportunities for people from, again, different states and organizations across the region to convene and talk about what they're working on, how that's going, again, where they're running into barriers, the impact that has had on, again, people's understanding of where they can be effective, and just being able to collaborate with others on the issues that are important to them, has always emerged as such a critical aspect of doing this work, of being advocates in the energy space. And so having a group that is focusing on state public utility commissions and the work that can happen there within the context of a regional organization like the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition, I think is such an important entry point, because we have, as part of the broader coalition, people who are dedicated to building decarbonization and looking for ways to actively work to accomplish that goal. And so a work group like this that offers another set of tools and another group of entry points into how to do that work, I think is really, really empowering. And again, important right now, because so much is being developed in terms of policy and programs that relate to decarbonization, that having an engaged group of folks that share the same goals in the same region, meeting on a regular basis to just talk about those things, is super powerful in, again, for the region, in being able to move our work forward.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about like this being an important moment for maybe folks who don't know. Can you talk a little bit about what we see happening in these commissions across the Midwestern states?
Yeah. I'm sure folks are obviously aware of climate change and all of the work that's being done across the country in many, many spaces on how do we reduce the carbon impact and the carbon output of the resources that we use, and the energy resources in particular. So there is that much broader policy work that's happening, driven by federal policies, state policies, company policies, that is resulting in more clean resources on the system, so more renewables or technologically driven things like having battery storage resources available. And it's also resulting in things that are, and I should say, technology change is also driving some of this, where there are more resources that can be located at our home. So think of rooftop solar is one of those options. Energy efficiency is another one of those things that are increasingly being adopted by utilities and by states across the country to achieve those climate goals. What is really important in how we do our work is that shift to those types of resources from what have been really big power plants, fossil fuel driven, that are driven by fossil fuel resources being a thing of the past, means that we are in large part reconstructing the energy system and what we expect out of it, how it's going to work. Right. And that has also initiated the recognition that we can do things in a more equitable way and serve people who have historically been harmed by the energy system by using these new tools and resources. And so we call it often in the energy space, the energy transition. That is a lot around the fossil fuel, transitioning out of fossil fuels, but really is also in that underpinning, how can we do things differently and bringing a more human-centered, community-centered approach to how people produce and receive and use energy.
Yeah. And I think in light of kind of that outlook, now is like an incredible time for folks. If you've been interested in regulatory issues, like now would really be the time to jump in. And I also think there is the sense that, we don't really have time to mess this transition up. And so we want to be thoughtful in planning and putting policies in place to make sure that things are done equitably and affordably and et cetera, et cetera. What would you like to see as kind of like a win of the regulatory working group? Like, what are some things that you hope that we would be able to accomplish, let's say, in the next year?
I would love to first just see new entrants into public utility advocacy. So folks who have not previously been at the table, that the work that's happening within the regulatory working group is providing that necessary support and encouragement for people to bring their issues into those spaces, into public utility advocacy. So having new entrants that feel like they can confidently do that work because they have the information that they need, they have the technical, a place to go and ask questions and to get whatever it is that they need to be able to move their issues forward, I think is the big win that we're shooting for. So as many groups as we can get, or people as we can help get to that space, I think is a big win. And the other thing that comes to mind for me that I think would be really effective for the working group is to potentially identify some shared priority issues across the footprint that we can help build advocacy materials to support. So certainly there will be places where people and or communities have something unique that they're advocating for, and we want to be there to support that. But there certainly are a number of things, like maybe community solar policy, so that community organizations and or renters can be owners in a solar project so that they are actually earning money when that unit is operating. Things like that would be important wins across the region would be another thing that I think could be really helpful. And then advocating together across the region on similar things would really get the attention, not only of the regulators in the region, but all policymakers in the region when people are acting in concert and we're building a movement to make change in this space.
Yeah, totally. Let's see. What would you say are some of the misconceptions that people have around public service commissions and kind of how they operate?
One big thing is putting aside that people don't know about them. When they do, because of these really technical processes that
Yeah,
are typically involved, that they feel inaccessible, that it feels often like this is a decision-making venue where I am not welcome and my input
right,
is not wanted. And that is to help folks understand that the commissions really do want to hear from you. So I encourage folks to ask for meetings with their public utility commissioners to talk about the things that are important to them. And I think on the other side of that, inviting the Public Utility Commission members or their staff to join you in your spaces as a community organization, to invite them to meetings that you're already holding where your community can talk about what things are important to them. It's just another, I know they often seem like they're so distant in some instances. I'm sure geographically they are, but with virtual opportunities and everything today, that ability to truly connect and share your thoughts is important. And again, one that I think people are often shy away from because they think it's either not feasible or too difficult or don't know how to engage in that. Another thing that's a common misconception is that commissions can just do whatever they want. We talked earlier about the commissions being a creature of statute, essentially, that there are laws that govern what authority and what limits there are to that authority. And so there are times where something that folks want done and should be done may not be within the commission's authority. But that's also important to understand and
right.
for them to articulate, frankly, the commissioners themselves, if that's the case, so that if a law needs to be changed or something else needs to happen outside of their authority, that advocates know that and can then pursue that approach to accomplish their goals. So just understanding that not everything can necessarily happen at a commission, though many things do. So just having that understanding coming in that there may be limits to what a commission can act on, but that shouldn't be a barrier either to pursuing whatever the fix might be, even outside of the
Yeah.
commission.
And those are the kinds of discussions and things that we're having in the working group. And it sounds like there's a lot of work to be done. I'm not sure how we're going to get there, but we'll figure it out.
So keep at it.
What would folks who are maybe interested in the regulatory working group, what do you gain and what would people gain from being part of kind of like this regional diverse coalition group and the working group more specifically?
I think it is that increased level of information. It's a place to come and get information. So even if you're someone who isn't sure if it's for you, join the group and bring your questions into those spaces. We always have time on the agenda for people to raise things that they're working on, to share an issue that they're running into, to share a success story, or again, just to ask questions about how things work at a commission. So having that venue to try to resolve any questions or issues, I think is a really valuable part of what we offer. And then the other is just the camaraderie. I have learned so much from being in Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition meetings, in hearing what other people are working on and how they're approaching issues. Even as long as I've been been doing this work and been in this regulatory space, I learn something every time that someone has taken an approach to an issue that has been super effective and that right, gives me ideas of how we might be able to apply that in other spaces, and that people just support you, right? Outside of you and I, Joanne, as part of our role in the working group, it's such an inclusive and supportive space that if you're bringing that issue to the table, it isn't just the people who are moderating that meeting that support you. It's the other advocates who are at the table that offer you that type of support of, yes, keep going, and give you a pat on the back when you need it, and empathize with you when things are hard. So it's a really amazing group.
Yeah, and that is what coalition spaces are supposed to do. We are coming to the end of our time, so I would love if you could give a little pitch for our regulatory working group, how folks can get involved, what time and day it's on, things like that, and then we can kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, we meet once a month on the second Tuesday of the month, Joanne, at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Central.
Central, perfect. Yeah.
Because that covers all of the time zones in the region. And so please join us if you go on the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition website. And I see that the link to get more information about the group, and you can see the meeting schedule. Please just show up and see what is happening. The Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition, too, does a lot of work with, granting and connecting folks with other resources as well. So join the regulatory working group, join the coalition overall, because the coalition offers so many great so much great content on learning how to do things effectively and being an effective advocate. So join us at one of our meetings. Like we said, bring any questions or issues you have at the table. You don't have to have something baked to be part of the group. You can come and just listen. So if you have any interest in moving issues forward in the energy space, be part of the regulatory working group. And I am sure that you will learn something important to take away.
That was perfect. I also do want to pitch that if you have been listening and you're a little more interested in what a Public Utility Commission does, Tanya did a training for us a while back that's on the resources page of the website called PUC 101. I think that would be a great place to start if you're interested in getting more involved in regulatory work and kind of understanding what the space and the arena looks like. Well, thank you so much, Tanya, and thank you so much to the folks that joined us. That is going to bring us to the end of our podcast today. And I think we have a little exit video, but other than that, that is it for today. Thank you so much. And I'll see you soon online, Tanya.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Joanne. Bye, everyone.